We are now coming to a more sensitive and more human chapter that is about sexuality and marriage from a Christian perspective. So in this video we are going to listen or hear about what it means and our objectives in this chapter. Number one, you need to describe the nature and purpose of sexuality according to Christian ethics. Secondly, you need to understand why other forms and contents of sexuality fall short of God's perfect will. Thirdly, discuss how a biblical understanding of sexuality fosters health and holiness. We'll be looking at, begin with an introduction, then the meaning of sexuality, the meaning and purpose of marriage, perversion of sex and marriage, prostitution, the challenge of HIV and AIDS, and other related sexual transmitted diseases, the question of homosexuality. Then we talk about gender equality and marriage. Then we'll conclude. One of the most influential developments on human sexuality today is the sexual revolution. The sexual revolution. In the United States, sexual revolution refers to the period in the 1920s and 1960s to 1970s when a cultural rebellion brought about dramatic changes in sexual attitudes and practices. These were radical changes in sexual morality and sexual behavior in the Western world towards the end of the last century. Definition of certain terms: homosexuality. This is how people experience and express themselves as sexual beings. Human sexuality. Philosophical views on human sexuality. Philosophers like Sigmund Freud argued that it is human beings who construct sexuality using human reason. And what he's saying is an experience. When we see people of different sex or gender, you look at them, you identify that they are different from you, one. Then you construct in your mind something of admiration. It is very easy to admire a person of opposite sex than the same sex. Then you begin to imagine how it would be if you related, if you became friends, and it goes on and on. And that is through human reason. Can it make sense if I relate with this one or without? And you find that the attraction from your eyes, from hearing and feelings, you begin to develop something we call affection. Affection. And that brings what we call human sensuality. Freud gave sexual drives as centrality in human life, which involve actions and behaviors. You act towards that drive, and it will determine the way how you behave. He reasoned that pleasure lowers tension, while displeasure raises it, influencing the sexual drive in humans. In other words, when you are thinking about having, for example, sex or interaction or touching, and when you do, it will lower the tension you have in your mind, because you have achieved what your body felt, your senses wanted. But when you don't do it, it will raise it. You will become anxious. You influence your sexual drive as a human being higher and higher. You become so anxious. It becomes too bad when you express your love or your sexual desires and the person rejects. You hate yourself, you feel very bad, and sometimes there are some people who are who cannot control themselves. Those are people who rape because they want to lower the tension they have in their bodies. John Locke, he says people are shaped strongly by their social environments, especially by education. You are shaped strongly by the social environment where you stay. For example, you as an educated person, you behave differently from those who are not educated. And more so, you in your own profession, you will behave differently from other people in other environments of education. So the way how you talk, the way how you dress, the way how you socialize will be different. And sometimes our environment might be that it is more feminine than masculine, or more masculine than feminine. And because you want to impress the other, you have to make sure that you change the way how you behave because of the environment around you. In this case, he says children's mind as a tabula rasa. Tabula rasa means a blank slate or blackboard which has not been written on, very clean, so you can write whatever you want. So whatever goes into the mind of these children will come from the surrounding environment. As people develop, they discover their identity. That's why we say that children are in their formative stage. What you give them, or what is written in their mind, if it is good or bad, will determine their tomorrow. So it all depends where one grows. That's why sometimes when we grow, because of long exposure of certain values that we have observed in our families or societies, when we grow, we tend to be different from sometimes other people in the society think is right. Somebody who grows in a family of drunkards is likely to be a drunkard, because you grow seeing them brewing, drinking, and getting drunkard. And as the child grows, you might think that that is the way how to go. This is an example of many things that shape our way of life. So as you grow, you begin to understand as a person. As you develop a number of things, you discover who you are. If you discover that you are a human being among other human beings, then you begin asking yourself, why am I different from others? Or why are others different from me? Or you begin knowing the good and the bad, because you may find that from the families where you grow, they have put there a dividing line between the good or bad, the wrong and right. Locke believed that there are no natural obstruction that would block the development of a child's inherent potential for acting freely and rationally, and that everyone is born to become an independent being and benefit from the environment. That's why what is written on the brain of the child can sometimes be erased when one realizes that it has been a wrong imprint or writing. You have that freedom or that rationality to become independent and benefit from the environment where you will be. You can imagine, since you came to School of Law and School of Medicine, so many things have changed from where you have come. You have been from different schools, you have been from different homes and communities. You have joined a new community, and the new community has got new ideas, new values and principles. It is up to you now to go on your blackboard, the slate on which they have written certain things since you were born, and you begin putting there things that you feel is relevant for your new environment. So, human sexuality, we are either male or female, and this simple fact determines a lot in our respective lives. Humans are not the same as animals. Animal sexual acts are purely physical. If we ask, why did God create male and female of other species? Answer is simple. So that they could reproduce, they could live in harmony, they could live, in relationship. So we said they could reproduce, because in one of the directives given in the Old Testament, after God had created man in chapter 1, I think verse 27 to 28, he tells them to go and populate the world. That means he created them both male and female in order to produce. That's why in our earlier interaction we said that the single purpose of a woman is to produce children. Single sex cannot produce children, as we shall see and as we know. However, the sexual acts of humans are not simply physical like animals. They engage the entirety of the human person, the physical, the psychological, the spiritual, that is the divine. The human sexual acts must respect the values and ethics of all these realms. That's why you become mature. You begin now to ask yourself, among the people you have interacted of different sex, who is able to be my partner, my wife or my husband? Then you begin reasoning, how many children should we produce? What type of education? And so many other things. Because in one way or the other, you want to fulfill the physical obligation of you as an individual, but also the requirements of your society where you live. And also the psychological part of you, which makes either the lower and the higher tensions of sexual interaction, and then the spiritual, where God has a hand. Because you see, when you, even if you fulfill the physical obligation of marrying one another, but God is the one who makes you have sexual interaction and satisfaction, justifying your psychological moods, and God is the one who divinely directs that marriage into having children, nurturing them to respond to God's creation. So, human acts must respect the values and ethics attached to human sexuality of all these realms we talked about: the physical, the psychological, and the spiritual aspects of human sexuality. One, there is the biological, the state. We are created with biological parts. Men have got sexual parts, women have got sexual parts that later on will engage in intercourse. Then the spiritual, these are values, aspirations, and goals. Once you are together, what are your aspirations and goals? The goals may not necessarily be your personal goals. They must be within God set goals, and must fulfill specific values and principles. The psychological, which deals with the personality. For us as human beings, we have a personality inborn. When it is violated, then you become more or less human. And this psychological helps us to negotiate. When you want sex, you negotiate. When you want to marry, you negotiate. These days you sit and determine how many children you want. And this kind of thing is done from a human point of view. Animals do not enter that kind of negotiation. They normally don't choose their partners, although we know that there are very few species which get the only single partner until their death. One of them is like the crested cranes. Crested crane chooses his partner, and that is all. Then we have the economic, because in making a decision to make a family or any relationship, there is the idea of money or investment. It is part of human sexuality. You invest because you intend either to make a family or you have made a family. Then we have the social culture, the norms you find, politics played about in the family setting or the social society you find, the social group that you are brought in. And here we have an example of marriage. This is one of the pictures. Don't mind about when it was taken. You can see it is a little bit back because from a village setting, the way how they are dressed. But you see, the man has his wife celebrating their marriage with a best man and lady of honor, and then flower girls. They don't have peg boys like you will do later on, or very, very expensive attire. But that is a Christian marriage, how it looks like. The local marriage does not engage like that one. And marriage is a great gesture to uphold and support one another. And we know when you get there, you have listened. It is a lifelong commitment with vows. It is not something you take for granted. That's why you take time to think about whom should I marry, who should be my future partner. You don't enter in marriage today and when you are disappointed, tomorrow you throw it away. You enter there with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your body. Complete person for a better marriage. Marriage means a wedlock, which is a social union or a legal contract between people that create kinship. The moment a man and a woman come together and after they have entered into this relationship and engaged into a sexual intercourse, this union, the Bible says that they become one. They become one. They are no longer two. And science has proved that this sexual union over time tries to play about on it enters in the bloodstream of each of the couple members, that at one point it becomes part of one another. Scientifically, that's what they say. Doctors, you can prove it to ourselves whether that is what it is. But something that is very important here is that this social union is legalized. You make a contract. You swear to stay together no matter what happens between you until death do part you. So in a marriage, it is 1 to 1, not 1 to 2 or 2 to 2 or 2 to 1. It is 1 to 1, and you make a contract to stay together forever. We know there are certain misfortunes that befall couples, and that one also is under the legal redress, that when something happens, then legally it can be dealt with. So it is a union between a man and a woman. And the general purpose of marriage, we say that people marry for many reasons. We have understood from the Western world, there are people who marry and they don't want children. They don't want responsibility. There are people who marry for the sake of companionship, assuming that you marry at an old age, maybe you lost your former partner and you cannot stay alone. You may marry when you are no longer sexually strong or you don't need children. So we want to look at things that are included, which are more than one. Legal, like I said, legally you want to marry. Like in some countries, you cannot be recognized in a community unless you are married. You must have a wife to be recognized. Secondly, social. We know marriage is a social institution which makes the society or the community, it makes you become part of the society. It is a social activity, it is a social obligation. Unless you are sick, you are supposed to be married. Then for emotional, you know how when you grow, your emotions sometimes need to be stabilized because of the nature of your biology and the chemistry. So how do you do it? You do it by getting a partner, and then your emotions will be stabilized because you have somebody. You see, when God was creating woman in chapter 2, he said that he gave man a befitting helper. In this case, if we become one-sided, we say that a woman stabilizes the emotions of men. Not only one side should be emotional, it should be spiritual, it should be physical. But if we want to put it on either side, because remember they have always criticized the Bible being one-sided. But if we look at it the other side, also a woman needs a man to stabilize her emotions, needs company, needs all these. So a marriage is for these purposes. Then the economic. When you are together, they say, when you are together, you become strong. You work together for upgrading the level of your income. Economic perspective. Then the spiritual. You build one another. Because where other things are lacking, sometimes the spirituality of an individual is undermined. And the spiritual and religious come together. It is a religious perspective also to marry one wife, one man. It is a religious perspective. But also cultural reasons. Produce children. Culturally, when you marry and you have a family, they expect to see you having children. And when you don't have the children, then they begin wondering what has happened. So we need to think about how you can get children in the case of a medical problem which you cannot overcome. Considerations for selecting a partner. Spiritualism. We are having different we have different religious affiliation. We have different cultural backgrounds traditionally, and we have educational backgrounds and so on. So before you marry, you need to think about your partner. Who is your partner? What is it that you want in your partner? One of them, as Christians, since we are dealing with ethics from a Christian point of view, is spiritualism. A man or a woman who seriously believes that marriage is a sacrament is more likely to enter into it with a sense of profound commitment. Whether they are Christians, Jewish, or Muslim, it is irrelevant. Because if you don't have commitment, then for sure you are like somebody who is going to do a test, and when a test fails, you leave, you go. So in this case, we say it would be better if you first think about your commitment. That's why we engage. It is a spiritual issue to find out what your future partner believes in. whether has a commitment to be together with you, so that that commitment determines what you want tomorrow. Personal responsibility. It is common for people to blame whoever is around them instead of themselves. So you have to have a personal responsibility in a relationship like that. The idea of comfort ability. Where there is passion, passion is no substitute for genuine compatibility. No matter how important it may be in a relationship, there must be the idea of compatibility. People can feel passion for you, but they are not compatible in any way. Like if we come back and say, what you believe in might be different from what the other pattern believes in, so your beliefs are not compatible. And when you have different directions of understanding life around you, then this marriage may not work. You are not compatible. Self-entertainment. A man should be able to watch sports without the interference of his partner. If that partner is not interested, some of you like watching the Nigeria, some of you like watching Premier League and many other things, so that you should know the interests of your partner, as long as they do not water down your relationship. Because you may find somebody is interested in pornography, and pornography, we know how dangerous it is on family affairs. So by the same token, a woman should be able to shop or visit a salon with her friends without the man wondering where she is or who she is with or what they are saying about him. So that is building trust. That's why you say when you are going to marry, you engage for quite a long time and you begin to understand the likes and dislikes of your friend, so that they can determine what will be in the future when we come together. When you come in the sitting room, you have come from your work, and you find either your wife or your husband watching TV. Don't come and just snatch from her or from him the remote and you change the station because that's what you want. No. Give the person the opportunity to watch what is in his or her mind. Then wait for your time. Men have got a habit, even women, of suspecting that since my man is not here or my wife is not here, she is with somebody. If you don't have any built-in trust, this lack of trust will destroy your family. So this self-entertainment sometimes will take people out of the home for an hour to entertain themselves with others. You see, when you get married, you are not cut off from the world, but you need to know who is the world that you are associating with, provided they don't spoil your marriage. Complementarity or complementary. In the opinion of your closest friends and family members, do they think your partner is good for you? There are those people who always do wrong. Hello. I am in class teaching online. In this case, there are people who begin to interfere with your marriage. They ill talk about your marriage. So, sometimes they talk about your husband or your wife. Where were you looking when you married this one? Didn't you see that this woman or this man is very short? Didn't you see that there are so many things they can? What about the education? Why did you marry such a... My friend, These are wrong compliments. You need people who can give good compliments, and they reserve their negative compliments. So most people would expel the notion of seeking the opinions of others when they have made up their minds to be with someone. Yeah, it is good somebody to advise you and say, the person you are going to marry has these habits, so that in the course of your time you can study their habits which can be changed, but their habits which cannot be put up. For example, if somebody has already produced children, like a man mostly, and he wants to marry you, and you find the children with him, it may not be good for you, because they will spoil your marriage. Sometimes a woman might be having children, you don't want them. Those are the other adverse cases. But don't seek for the opinion of others who are going to water down what would have made you take somebody as your choice in marriage if there is no good reason. So we need compliments where people can support you with good ideas and not become negative. Control. Does your partner attempt to control you? That is, your actions, your thoughts, the way you dress, comb your hair. The answer might be yes or no, depending, because your actions might be negative to the family or the community where you live. For example, the way how you eat, they show that you eat like you are greedy or you are hungry all the time. The way how you express your thoughts are negative in the community. How you think about your in-laws and whatever. What about the way how you dress? Dressing these days has become an issue. A married woman putting on a skirt with a slit, such a slit that is so deep in the thighs. No, no, no. And you are the wife of somebody? What about some people who do not comb their hair? Recently I was looking at the election of the president of the law, is it the law whatever, this is Semakade, and you know how his hair looked like, and people made so many comments. So if he is your husband, maybe, I'm sorry to use this example, but I heard the comments of the people. Your husband or your wife, now because you are married, you are committed to one another, you may help in advising, can you dress like this as you are going out? Because there are certain things you can appreciate as an individual when you are at home, and there are things that you don't appreciate. Such a dress at home cannot be the dress out. The hair at home cannot be the hair out. Such a things. Control. There are certain things you need to control. There are things that you don't control. Then, respect and dignity. Respect and dignity. Does your partner treat you with respect and dignity, both in public and in private? If your answer is yes, then this is an excellent sign. But suppose it is not, what would you say about it?